Hey there, troublemakers. I already recorded this video once, but it was zoomed in on my face. You can see my pores. It was not good. So we're going to try this again. What did you miss? What are you going to miss having to not see the video of my very zoomed in face? Well, I'm cooking dinner, and I was going to tell you about how things were in the Kaitlin Armstrong trial today. I'm making stroganoff. I chopped some onions. I chopped some mushrooms. I chopped a little bit of garlic. I sauteed the onions, sweet onions, for, I don't know, 5 to 8 minutes. Well, actually, I sauteed them for 4 or 5 minutes, and then I threw in the mushrooms because I like to get my onions really good and cooked. Sweet onions, if you use sweet onions, you will not cry when you cut them. They are so sweet and kind, and they don't have the stuff in them that makes you cry. At least not the 10-15s we can get here in Texas. Best onion in the world. And then I put in the mushrooms and let them sweat out, and then I put in the garlic for about 30 seconds, 2 tablespoons of butter, then I sprinkled in some Wondrous Wondra pre-cooked quick mixing flour. If you make sauces, you want Wondra. Trust me. This is not sponsored by Wondra, I just love Wondra. That sauce is cooking very nicely. I got my pot of water going for my noodles. I have tempered my sauce into my sour cream. I'm going to put my sour cream in my sauce now. You just take some of the hot sauce, put it in the sour cream to warm up the sour cream so that it's not going cold or even room temperature into your pan. Alright, enough with the cooking lesson. Trial today was very, very hard. The crime scene specialist who took over 400 photos testified. They put 55 photos into evidence. After those photos were shown, I looked at the jury, and there's a very young juror. I mean, she could easily be 25, 26. So this one juror, who is a young woman, she looked pretty shaken up. I hope those jurors are taking care of themselves. So, what happened other than that in the courtroom today? Well, let me get my notes. Oh, I'm putting the beef in and some Dijon mustard and some Worcestershire and letting all of this just cook together, all nice and bubbly and warm, while I'm gonna boil some egg noodles. And we're gonna have tasty, tasty stroganoff for dinner. All right. Get these egg noodles going. They're in a separate bag because my cat clawed the bag open. Naughty cat. Alright, there we go. Okay. Okay, notes. We're gonna go through this pretty quickly since it's my second time. I don't remember if I told y'all that at the end of the day yesterday, when the state was examining a witness, questioning a witness, the defense said, objection, calling for witness to speculate, and Judge Brenda Kennedy said, you need to stand when you make an objection. Sustained this objection. It was kind of snarky and kind of funny. She hasn't had a whole lot to do, because there has not been much objecting going on at all. She seems like a cool lady, very even-keeled, very matter-of-fact, but, yeah. It's funny when she sort of called the defense on the carpet for not following procedure. And speaking of following procedure, they're running a tight ship. Yesterday, I noticed there was a lot of trash in the courtroom gallery when I was leaving, and the bailiff, when we started court today, said there was a lot of trash in the gallery at the end of the evening. I put additional trash cans around. Y'all pick up after yourselves. I mean, people. It's not a movie theater. It's not a bailiff's job to throw away your trash. So, at the end of the day today, it was much better. There was hardly any trash, and I picked up a thing or two and threw them away because I like to help out. So today, something else that came up twice at least, the defense would ask a witness, have you ever heard of confirmation bias? You know, and the witness would say, yeah, sure. Until finally, the state basically got it put into evidence via a question to a witness on whatever it's called after examine, cross-examine, redirect, that, well, so you've heard of confirmation bias. I'm just paraphrasing here. It's a pretty common defense strategy, isn't it? It's really well done on the state's part, basically saying, yeah, we know this is the approach that the defense is going to take, and they take it all the time. Oh, well, cops all have confirmation bias. Whatever. It was good. It was effective. Kaitlin Longoria was a crime scene specialist. The 55 photos. I told you about that. Mo Wilson's family steps out of the courtroom whenever there's going to be something difficult testified to, or audio played, or photos shown. There's a woman who sits next to Mo's mother, who I would guess is maybe her sister. She usually stays, and today was very, very, very hard for her when they were showing the photos of the body at the crime scene. She was very upset, and at the end of the day, poor Caitlin Cash was just in tears. It was a hard day, y'all. My thoughts go out to this family. All right, let's see. So I sussed out the location of the bike by looking at all of the videos and pictures today. It's been reported that it was 200 feet from the apartment. It's more like 50 from my measurement. Basically, you've got the back alley and you've got the property on the other side of the back alley. If you go over one property, that's where the bike was tossed. So like if you walk past that garage door, immediately to the right, the bike was tossed right there, kind of further back, but not very far back. It was really close to the apartment. Some people in the media are calling it a forest of bamboo. It's not really a forest. It's just a big old clump of overgrown bamboo in someone's backyard. I don't know what I would call it. Probably a clump. That being said, on my Twitter, I have a fake, walkthrough from the apartment, bottom of the steps, to where the bike was thrown. Those photos, though, those street view photos are 4 years old, and back then everything was much tidier. It really is just a tiny little clump of bamboo in those photos. But we got to see an extensive video walkthrough today of the crime scene, and the grass was much longer, like ankle deep, and there was a lot more bamboo. So call it a forest if you want. I'd still call it a clump. I think Kofor was calling it a thicket. That works. Cops? I don't know. COPSE? At any rate, so that's on my Twitter if you want to check it out. They brought in Mo Wilson's bicycle, and it was an oddly emotional thing. Like, I didn't see anybody crying, but it was just sort of gutting to see this, elite sports equipment, that an elite athlete who was at the top of her game, at the top of her field, brought into the courtroom. Her water bottle was still on it, her helmet was still on it. It's just really sad. It was wrapped in plastic and taped together, and they took it out of the plastic, and Kofor had Ferrara lay it in the center of the well in front of the jury in exactly the same position it was in when it was found, in the bamboo. And I'm not sure what he's getting at. I really don't have any idea, but she obliged, and there it was. And he talked to her about where she got the DNA, where she swabbed for DNA, and where she looked for prints, and why didn't she look here, and why didn't she look there, and whatever. Again, it just wasn't very effective, in my opinion. Oh, I wanted to point out that the bike is very light. I think it came up in testimony. I mean, somebody could have stood in the alley and thrown it, pretty much, to where it landed. These super high-end bikes are extraordinarily light. And they don't have kickstands, which y'all probably already knew. Let's see. All right, so Sergeant Tim Price testified today. So trigger warning, 10 seconds. Go away for 10 seconds. We're going to talk about gunshot wounds. Tim Price confirmed that Mo Wilson was shot twice in the head, I think from right to left, side of head, and once in the chest, just right about here, sort of just left of center, just under the breastbone, right about here, pretty close to the heart, actually. And I'm going to skip ahead, actually, and tell you guys really quickly. We got to hear the gunshot wounds. We had 3 people, 3 witnesses today with 3 different security cameras. Sorry, I'm checking my noodle. It's not a euphemism. Those are done. I'll be right back. Yeah, those are done. It's a little al dente. All right, I'll tell you about these timestamps and then I'll pour that out. You know what? Actually, I think I'm just gonna move the noodles directly into the sauce. So we're gonna do that while we talk. One of the security videos was a woman who, oh boy, you'll just have to go look at the map I made on Twitter. It's really quite good. I think you'd find it quite helpful if you're interested in this case. But anyway, it sort of has a viewpoint of the side, kind of the stair. No, well, you can't see the stairs. It's anyway, whatever. It doesn't really matter. This particular one was the one I talked about first, and you could see the Jeep going past several times. And those are noted on my big overview map. I've noted all of these various timestamps. But one of them, so you've got the alley and the garage apartment that faces the alley. So the stairs come up here from the alley. It's also where this front house, it's his garage. The first floor is his garage. So if he wants to park, he goes down the alley, drives past the little steps that go up to the garage apartment, the second story garage apartment, and into his garage, goes across his yard and into his house. The security camera that picked up the audio of the gunshots and screams is, so, garage apartment, front house, Maple Street, I think it's Maple. It's like Maple, Chestnut, all those streets over there have those kinds of names of trees. Street, like 3 properties down, 2 or 3, I think, properties down is where this guy had a front-facing camera. And I'll tell you what, you absolutely could hear the gunshots and screams. It was chilling. So before this neighbor testified, the Wilson family again left the room, the courtroom, which is good, is wise. So the timestamps for those are 9:15 and 48 seconds. You hear 2 screams, and they're definitely the screams of a victim. You can't hear exactly what words are said. So it sounds almost like she was saying no, no, but it was really hard to hear. Clearly someone who was absolutely terrified. So that was at 9:15:48. At 9:15:52, so 4 seconds later, there were 2 gunshots. Bam, bam. Not ba-bam, bam, bam. 2 gunshots. And then 6 seconds later, at 9:15:58, there was 1 shot. So, oh, I did the 10-second warning and then I got distracted. Okay, well, here's another 10-second warning. So, Mo Wilson was shot twice in the head. Oh, I said that. And then once here, this one happened after she was on the ground. They found the projectile on the floor underneath her body. So, that's that. Okay. 10-second warning over. What else? I did all that. They're running a tight courtroom. I did all that. Okay. Tim Price, Sergeant. For me, the cross-examination of this witness by the defense didn't work. It was borderline snarky, and the jury didn't look very impressed. The attorney said things like, I'm paraphrasing here, but so David Harris is the man who owns the entire property. He owns the front house, which is this cute little old purple house. It's a really cute house. And then there's his backyard behind it, and his doorway into his garage. And then above his garage, this would be the back. I mean, Kaitlin Cash wouldn't have access to the yard at all. So this would be sort of like her back facing windows, and then that stairwell that goes down into the alley for her to get to her apartment. So David Harris, homeowner, landlord, at one point the defense asked Sergeant Price, well, was David Harris arrested or in cuffs when you questioned him? And, you know, we all know the answer is no. He wasn't a suspect. They really, really, really wanted to talk about how maybe David Harris should have been a suspect. What about David Harris's high school son? I don't know, man. He just wasn't ever a suspect, you know? It just didn't work. And then I wrote down verbatim one that really didn't work, which was, were y'all just going to stand on the street and wait for neighbors to come out and talk to y'all? I mean, come on. Like I said, the jury did not look impressed with this. I think that maybe they need to reconsider that strategy, because I just don't think I think it's alienating the jury, to be honest with you. So, that happened today. Oh boy, since I'm doing this a second time, I can't remember what I've said and not said. I did talk about the grass being overgrown. Right, so my walkthrough, if I didn't already say this, I should say it, and if I'm repeating myself, I apologize. My sort of virtual fake walkthrough on my Twitter feed is using Street View images that are 4 years old. And 4 years ago, the grass in the yard where the bike was thrown is really tidy, and it apparently has become more and more overgrown over time. So, all right, let's see. What else? All right, back to David Harris. He lives in the front house. He has two sons who are now 19 and 16. When the murder happened, the 19-year-old was in high school. They didn't talk about the 16-year-old at all. I don't know why. So, a moment of levity today. So David Harris says, you know, I like to smoke a little marijuana before exercising. So I was 3D printing something in my house, and I, you know, went out and through the backyard and into the garage specifically to do a bong hit. And this is Austin. It's just so, it was a bit of a release valve for a very, very hard day. He was just very frank about, you know, I like to smoke. I went and took a bong hit before walking my dogs. So when he entered the garage, he pulled up the garage door a little bit. I guess to let the smoke out. I don't know. And that was when he heard a bicycle whizzing by. So a lot has been made about why didn't he hear the gunshot. He's like, man, I don't know, but I didn't hear the gunshot. My thought is that there's no reason to assume that whoever murdered Moriah Wilson shot them, immediately ran out of the apartment, got on the bike, rode it like 50 feet, and then threw it. And that's another thing that's weird. In the opening statements, Attorney Jones said that there's DNA on the bike seat and the handlebars. Maybe she grabbed it by the seat. I heard there was DNA on the bike seat and thought maybe she got on the bike. But it makes no sense. You would literally, and you wouldn't be whizzing by, actually. It doesn't totally add up. But my point is, it's absolutely entirely possible that David Harris was in his house doing his 3D printing when the gunshots occurred. A minute or two passed, and he goes out to do his bong hit, and when he goes to open the door a little bit, the person upstairs hears it and runs out. I guess. I don't even know if that necessarily has to sync up, but I can make sense of him not hearing the gunshot. I don't think it is all that weird. The other thing I want to talk about as far as weird timing and how long whoever murdered Mo Wilson was in the apartment is, so her left leg has a horizontal line on it right about where her tan line is for her bike shorts. And at first I thought maybe that was mud, but Sergeant Price confirmed that it was blood, and there's an abrasion, a vertical abrasion on that same side, sort of at the top of her thigh. And honestly, y'all, it looks like she was wearing bike shorts when she was killed and that someone removed them. So maybe we'll get some answers from the medical examiner, because it's really odd sort of blood patterns on her left leg that I can't really make sense of. So that's quite curious. Okay, so back to moments of levity. So in lawyers versus tech, tech is at 3 and lawyers are at 0. Because one of the attorneys today asked one of the neighbors, I think it was Harris, who's about my age, so are you on a neighborhood listserv? Harris was like, no. I'm sure Harris knew exactly what a listserv was, but he's like, I'm not on one. I don't know. Do they have listservs anymore? I don't think they do. That amused me. So we're at 2-0 there. And then later, with one of the other neighbors, one of the attorneys said, were you part of some kind of next door neighbor app that sends emails to people? And that's a little closer. Maybe I'll give half a point to the attorneys. But some kind of next door neighbor app that sends emails to people. No, that's not really how I would describe Nextdoor. Yes, this particular neighbor was on Nextdoor. All right, so that was levity again. And then a final moment of levity was when the defense was asking David Harris about his marijuana usage. They were like, well, could you have made sense of the bike sound that you heard? Would you have necessarily heard the gunshots? He was like, he didn't say it like this, but it just was, man, it was just one bong hit. I was fine. He did say it was just one bong hit, but it's like, come on, dude. He said it was something along the lines of it wasn't, what word did he use? It wasn't intoxicating, I think is what he said. It was pretty funny. Nobody laughed, and that's appropriate, but it did sort of take the edge off of things, I think, for most people. Right, so that happened. Okay, let's see. What else do I want to tell you about? I did that. Yes, I talked about that. I talked about that. Oh, we're almost to the end here. Okay. Oh, the third security camera was sort of up around the corner, and it showed the Jeep stopping for 2 or 3 minutes. It is very, very obvious, and you can piece it together very easily, that the Jeep drove around the neighborhood, drove around the area right around the apartment many times for about, I want to say half an hour, 45 minutes before the murder happened. Right. So I think I've mentioned my overview map on Twitter. I mean, I just think you might find it helpful if you're following this case, because I'm putting all of the timestamps on it as well. And then the only other thing I want to talk about is this. I want to get on a little bit of a soapbox here. Some people in the media are saying things like, and I am not defending Kaitlin Armstrong, but I don't like sensationalistic approaches to these types of news stories. And so I'm seeing things like, well, she's showing no reaction to the crime scene photos. So look, Directly in front of me is her parents. This is where people are kind of sitting in the same place every day, it seems. And so I have a little place directly in the row behind her parents. Her father's taking notes, her mother is just sitting there. In front of that is where the defense attorneys sit when they're not sort of at the front. Then there's one of those little sort of, little half walls, little quarter walls you see in courtrooms, little barrier. And then in front of that is the table that Kaitlin Armstrong sits at with her whichever two attorneys are up to bat, as it were. All you can see is the back of her head. And she has very thick, long, wavy hair. You have no way of knowing how she's reacting to these photos. Even if her face is facing forward, she could have her eyes closed. She could be averting her gaze. I think it's a little irresponsible to try to characterize her reactions to anything. She never turns around and looks at the gallery. My dogs are barking. She doesn't look at the jury as near as I can tell. She just sort of looks at the screen. Or maybe she glances towards the jury, but she's not moving around. She's not moving her head much. She's not putting her head into her hands. We're getting almost nothing sitting behind her from her. So I would caution against having an opinion about what her reactions might be to what's going on at trial. The other thing I'll say is, so I'm right close to where she comes in every day. There's a big, heavy, metal-looking green door, like a super secure-looking door. And the process is the same every single time. You can hear somebody unlocking the door from the other side. The door opens. 2 or 3 law enforcement officers come out. There's always 2 women, and then the third person I think might be different yesterday versus today. And then there's at least a minute that goes by and some sort of shuffling and maybe jingling going on just inside that door. And then she walks into the courtroom. I think it's pretty obvious that she's being restrained, is in restraints when she's being moved from her jail cell to the courtroom. It makes sense. She tried to get away a month ago. As I've mentioned before, I heard conversation about her shirt needing to fit over a vest. She's a very slender woman, so she could have a vest on and we wouldn't even be able to tell. Things do look a little lumpy under her clothes, so I suspect she's wearing a vest. Obviously I can't prove that, but as far as her not being in restraints, sure, maybe not when she's in the courtroom, and her lawyers probably argued for that, and good deal, that's what you're supposed to do when you're a defense attorney. The more not incarcerated your client looks, the better. So I wouldn't say she's not in restraints. She's not in visible restraints. We could say that. So that's my little soapbox as far as accurate reporting goes. Okay, so, yeah, hard day. Oh, the last thing I'll mention, and this is just sort of odd curiosity. The first day, 8 witnesses were called up to the front and sworn in together for the day. It was something I've never seen before. And one of them was her sister. Her sister has yet to testify, so I don't know. I talked about this yesterday as well. I would think her sister would testify when they get to after she has fled and the state and is up in New York and using her sister's passport to fly to Costa Rica. I don't know why they did that. It might have been a strategy to get her sister out of the courtroom, or because she has not been back in the courtroom since. I have no idea. It's very, very confusing. It's all very perplexing. Maybe she was the only witness who was in the courtroom. Maybe she had to be pulled up and sworn in like that so that she would be told she needed to leave the courtroom. I really don't know. But that was interesting. I really don't think we're going to see her for several days. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Colin Strickland before we see her, because he was, there's a lot of talk today about how he was their initial suspect. So they got his name and they went and talked to him right away. So I imagine we'll hear from him pretty quickly, would be my guess. All right, so yeah, hard day for the Wilson family. My heart goes out to them. This is a hard trial. It's a weird trial. There's a lot of weird stuff that we're learning that we didn't know because of the gag order. So I'll try to bring it to you as it happens. Okay, well, if you have any questions, just ask below. Thanks. See you guys tomorrow.